What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. It's your boy Swipa, and we got the one, the only Matt Moore from the Action Network, senior NBA writer. Matt, how are you doing today, brother?
I'm good, man. I used to want that title just because I never got it at CBS, and now as I get older, I'm realizing oh no, I'm senior. That doesn't feel as good. How are you, man?
Man, I'm living. I'm feeling a lot better. I honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I thought we were gonna come into this conversation with a 4-game losing streak, and yeah, I wasn't prepared to have that conversation. But they were able to pull it out last night, and it was by the hair of their chinny chin. But it ended up being a really good game.
Yeah, phenomenal game. I mean, anytime you got Jamal and Dame going head to head, trading haymakers like that, like big shot after big shot. The Nuggets and the Blazers always claim that this isn't a rivalry, and Blazers got a bunch of new guys and Nuggets got a bunch of new guys, but
Right.
There's a familiarity there and there's an intensity. And I think Dame in particular brings it because it's now, the playoff series are 1-1. And so phenomenal game. They needed that win. It kind of resets things, gets everybody off of the ledge, turns down the temperature, and now we can see what they can do on the homestand.
So somebody who's, a lot closer to the team and plugged in, I feel like the Portland Trailblazers and the Denver Nuggets, even though they play a lot of basketball, and I think there's adds to it, I feel like relative to other NBA teams, I feel like the Nuggets actually get along with them because of Chauncey, because of Dame, because of Nurk, and then obviously even just Jeremy Grant being there now. Do you feel like there's we're so used to playing against you, but also we've been around y'all so much that there's a level of familiarity there?
I think they're always going to be the guys that were around for Nurk are always going to be friendly with Nurk. I think that most teams in the league, there's just, in my personal opinion, there's not enough bad blood. You should have a little bit more bad blood. The Blazers knocked you out in 2019. That 2020 series, 21 series was really, toughly contested. But the reality is most of these guys hang out, right? Most of these guys know each other. They've known each other from AAU or from another team or from college, whatever. They run with the same people. They have the same agent. And so everybody, I think, is pretty friendly. I think there is a certain level with Dame was on top of that division for a long time. And now the Nuggets are on top. And I think that for Dame, a lot of the season is about trying to get back on top of the NBA. And so I think that's one of the reasons why last night had a little bit of an edge to it. But, nothing too physical, obviously, for a regular season game. And that was fine. You got a lot of familiarity, obviously, with Jeremy. I mean, that's the thing is, if you're teammates with somebody, almost nobody is not friends with somebody after they leave. It's basically just Enes Kanter. Enes Kanter is the only person that people play with and then are not friends with later. Everyone else is pretty cool.
All right. So, with last night's game, it was a 121-120 victory. And it felt like there was a bunch of game of runs. And so it started off first quarter, 36-0. Vlaco gave up a really lazy contest on a pull-up three-pointer to close the quarter out. Then the Nuggets kind of went on a little bit of a run. It was a 1-point second quarter. I don't know what it is about these third quarters. And maybe, hopefully, it's just third quarters in Portland. But Anthony Simons last time, 22 points. This time, Damian Lillard goes for 18. And he shoots 5 of 9 from 3. What do you feel like the cadence of the game was due to? Was it just the fact that, it was just a lot of hot shooting? Or were the Nuggets turning the ball over? What was your feeling during the game before that fourth quarter happened?
I think a lot of it, and I said this on Twitter, that it felt to me in part that there is a trap that the Nuggets are falling into as far as when they let an opponent get loose, that's when things really go downhill for them. They're not able to, once you let a team get comfortable and they're hitting shots, it's going to be hard to kind of shut them down, right? That to me is where a lot of this winds up happening is these opponents get to where they're so comfortable hitting shots. You let Dame, they had some blown switches, right? Guys just with a soft switch, not closing out, not denying space. You let Dame hit 2 of those, and he's gonna rattle off 6 more. That's how he's wired. The Mavericks was the same deal. They gave up turnovers, and those guys got out in transition, and the ball found energy. You want to deny teams that. You want to keep teams out of rhythm. You want them uncomfortable early. The Nuggets always seem to want to settle in defensively and then play it late. And that's why these margins are so close. Just like with the Mavericks game, if they play the way that they're capable of, and they do that for the first not even the full 36 minutes.
Right.
If you do that for 24 between the two units of the first 36 minutes interspersed, you're in control of the game and you don't have to be scrambling to get back. But they just, I do feel like in both halves, the first and the second, the first one, they usually come out hot, like on fire offensively. They're a really good first quarter team because of their offense, but they ease into things a little bit too much defensively. This has been the thing that, we've talked about this a lot. The mentality's got to be, we're going to jump on them and we're going to hit them and we're going to hit them with effort plays. Not every single night. You don't have to do that versus Houston. Settle in versus Houston. It's fine. No problem. Settle in versus the Magic. But versus the Mavs and the Blazers and the Wolves and the Warriors and these type of teams, you need to jump on them. And the Nuggets very rarely do that.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to understand, Matt, is they have made so many significant improvements defensively when it comes to their personnel, but the intensity, the rotations. I mean, Steve Jones on Twitter broke down the game last night, and it's funny, he does not cover the Nuggets every game, but even some of his tweets, he was mentioning, I don't understand why these rotations are so busted, like why they're not making these really easy reads at time. And Matt, I lost my mind yesterday. Damian Lillard, as if he's just some Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
Jeff Green and AG step up to a switch, and it's like, oh, all right, well, hi, Dame. And then my whole thing is like, where is the consistency in the intensity? Because we put this on Twitter the other day, and I saw you brought this up also on LockedOn Nuggets. They're a great clutch defensive team. They've been really good, but they decide to turn it on for 5 minutes first. But I'm really, truly trying to understand, because Michael Malone says they're coming into this year, we want to aim to be a top 5 defense. Yeah. But yet, it seems like the intensity is gone backwards with a team that is fully put together, even though Michael Porter Jr. wasn't there yesterday. For you, what is it that is missing that doesn't allow for them to explore how good they can be defensively?
So I thought the most interesting comments were going to come from the players. And so I after the game versus the Mavericks, I went and I talked to KCP, and then Aaron spoke with the media in the press room. And I asked them both kind of this question of, are you guys kind of settling in with effort? Like, is it just like a veteran thing? I'm not, I was trying to be really hard and be like, hey, so like, why are you half-assing it? You don't want to ask that question because playing in the NBA is really hard. But, trying to be like, is it a battle to try and conserve energy? And KCP was like, to a degree, but KCP was like, honestly, the bigger thing is we don't communicate. We're not connected. And AG said the same thing as well. There's a couple of possessions that have stood out to me in the last couple of games when I started to frame it through that prism. When I started to think about, okay, let's say it's not an effort thing. Why are you behind? You're behind because you're not sure of what you're doing. You're not certain of what you should be doing. And I've noticed that there are these occasions that happens where guys, either it's on X outs where guys are having to run one guy's going to run here to the high wing and the other guy's going to run to the corner. There'll be a moment of hesitancy from the first guy. So the guy that's supposed to run to the corner, he hesitates because he doesn't know if the first guy's going to make the rotation.
Right.
And that half second is all you need to generate an open three-pointer. Mm-hmm. There are schematic things. I get asked a lot about the scheme and about the impact of and I've been critical of Ryan Saunders this season. I was critical of Jordi Fernandez last season. Like the move away from Wes Unseld's scheme, which was like, we're just going to pressure. Like we're going to get the ball out of the primary ball maker's hands and make everybody else make plays. Moving away from that has had bad consequences on a schematic level for the defense. However, some of this, and we talked about this morning on Locked On, is it's stuff like Bruce Brown is watching Jamal and Dame in the corner, and Jamal's doing fine. Now, he doesn't know if Jamal's going to be doing fine. Like Dame can beat him, right? But if you overhelp, then when you recover, that's when Anthony Simons catches and goes around you because you're a step out of position. And you see this all the time. And a good kind of comparison point for this, the 2017 Celtics had Isaiah Thomas, who was playing at an MVP level. And they were sweet. And so Isaiah would get on these guys, and Marcus Smart, Thomas would be doing fine. He would actually be okay. But Marcus Smart continuously, did not feel like he could just leave Isaiah one-on-one, that he had to come over and help. And the minute he did that, the ball handler is swinging it. And
Mm-hmm.
that guy's doing that. It's the same kind of stuff. On some level, you have to trust the scheme. You have to trust your teammates, and you have to accept that it is better for an opponent to beat a guy one-on-one and try and make a play contested than it is for you to try and overhelp and give up a higher percentage, better open look. To me, those are like the key problems. They overhelp and pick and roll. That's a scheme issue. Like, I don't know why Bones Highland is on the other side of the floor,
Right.
side pick and roll. What are you going to do? Like, stay in the corner, right? But some of this is about how much they communicate. It's about how decisive they are. It's about
really
how
good.
confident they are in what they're supposed to be doing. The AG thing, I think, is a perfect example of this. If you call for the switch and AG's like trying to process it, and it's like, oh, okay, I need to get out on Dame. It needs to be like switch, bam, I'm up in Dame's space.
Right.
Like I am taking away all of his airspace as much as you can without fouling. And they are constantly behind on that particular issue. And if you ask, like, is that a coaching thing or is it a personnel thing? It is quite honestly both. These veteran players know better than a lot of what the stuff that they're doing, but they don't feel like they are confident enough in what they're doing to execute it the way that it needs to be. This is always a tension point in coaching staffs where you ask, shouldn't you switch what you're doing? And they're like, well, we could switch what we're doing, or we could actually do what we're asking them to do correctly, and then we can see what the results are. And that's the tension point I think that they're having, and that's why they're not able to make many strides.
So do you feel like specifically then, are the players overcompensating for Jokic, Bone, Porter, Murray, the players that are not necessarily, and let's not Jokic, but Jokic is obviously a big in space. That's not what he does extremely well. But for those players in particular, do you feel like the team is like, oh, they're too aware that they might need to be assisted in certain spaces, and so therefore they're overcompensating, or are they just like saying that we don't trust you to stop your individual matchup because you've been getting cooked all year?
I think it's less about I don't trust you and more of like I want to help, right? Like it's like, you know, you're supposed to help. You're supposed to help your teammates. You're supposed to, you know, hey, give those guys help. Hey, take away, do what you can, make an impact play. Some of this is guys looking to create steals and turnovers. Like if I crowd the lane, maybe I can, you know, deflect the ball, get a steal, and we can go the other way. To me, the big message needs to be, guys, our offense is so good that as long as we're not giving up catch and shoot threes and wide open layups at the rim or open dunks uncontested, we're going to win. Like if we're not turning the ball over and sending it back the other way for live ball turnovers, we're gonna be fine.
But
like
Matt, 2000, but you help me understand this, because again, you know, you've been doing this. In 2018, they specialized in taking away three-pointers. They had a scheme design to take away three-pointers. What did you get? You got open threes on the corner, and then they gave you that little 6 to 10 foot area for that center. Because remember, this is like the Rashawn Holmes era when he would do those little pop shots and all that kind of stuff. But I'm saying, like, they had a weakness, but they also mitigated their flaws by executing at a high level. But I'm saying, like, what has taken place to where you've improved across the board seemingly defensively, but they're just not getting it? And again, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe it's just overhelping, and I can see that. I can understand that. Maybe
look, I'll be real. Like, it is scheme. I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, I don't think the scheme is a problem. I think you can execute the scheme better, but they're in a tension point with whatever it is that they're trying to sell isn't getting conveyed. And I'm always just going to believe that the best way to use Nikola is to use his quickness, not speed, his quickness, contained at the edge. Because, like, here's a lot of it. All right. I've gotten a lot of comments about, like, hey, you know, it's all scheme. And I'm telling you, like, that's not true. The Mavericks game is a good example of this. Luka, late fourth quarter, comes off of a screen. Bones doesn't close off the passing lane. So Joker's high. Like, they're in the scheme that you want them to run. And Bones is high, but Bones is not, like, up in his space contesting. When they did that, it forced a reset. That's what you want, is they run pick and roll. Luka can't do anything. He has to reset. And then you're just taking time off the clock when they're trying to get some sort of movement going. Like
Right.
when it works, it's great. But Bones doesn't do that. And so Luka's either able to find the angle to reverse it to the corner behind a curl screen. And now you have this open corner three. So like the execution matters as much as the scheme. You can run at the level aggressively and be horrible if you're not containing the ball handler. So there's all these type of things that go into it. For me, it is like a matter of there are things about the scheme that put them in bad positions.
Right.
And there are things about the scheme that one of the things with drop is you're supposed to, if you're playing drop, and they're playing more at the level in the last couple of games. But if you're playing drop, you're trying to take away the corner three. It allows you to stay home. And then the Nuggets guys are all the way in the paint, trying to recover to the outside. And I'm just like, guys, you can't give up all three just because you're worried about the lob.
Right.
Like, make the guy hit a contested lob over Jokic. Make the guy hit and depending on who the shooter is, make the guy hit a leaner in the lane, depending on who the guard is. Like versus Dame, that's not possible.
Right.
Dame's going to kill you. You play drop versus Dame and you're dead. That's it. There's no question. But I think if you take away, if you scheme your coverage and pick and roll to what you're going at, but again, a lot of these things aren't even pick and roll actions. It's about like one-on-one containment. It's isolation. It's can you contain your man? And there are problems with like Bruce Brown's size. AG has been amazing offensively. And I think he's played really hard. Like he hasn't been top level defender so far this season. I think KCP really has been. I think KCP's been awesome. There's been some cases. Go ahead.
Did you see him yesterday with Anthony Simons, like the screen navigation he was having? That was primarily him as a primary defender there.
I know. I think the thing is like the weight on KCP is pretty heavy, and he still winds up making about 4 plays a game where I'm like, they didn't have this last year. Like he just makes defensive plays and those little things out of all the stuff that Christian Brown does that everyone loves.
Wow. Yeah.
KCP does a lot of that too. And so like, I think KCP is less responsible for it as the other ones.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I think the thing is I have seen them have these specific breakdowns. And again, that containment thing you're talking about, something that Portland did yesterday that not a lot of teams have done is that when they tried to do the hedge on Dame Lillard at the top of the ball, they would then reset the screener, which would be Nurkic, and then he would come back around, and essentially he's at a wide open three-pointer again. So the containment hasn't been as crisp. Jokic got beat on the trap a couple of times as well. It led to some wide open dunks. So again, and rotation, to sometimes even when AG rotated on Nurk yesterday, there was a possession where Nurk got the ball basically like right in front of the rim. He didn't even expect the ball to get there. AG was a little bit late on the rotation and also wasn't like strong enough. But look, Matt, this is what I mean sometimes when I say that Michael Porter Jr. aids the Denver Nuggets defense, even though it doesn't make conceptual sense. I think there's something to say about having a 6'10" and a half athlete on the court that when you are rotating, you at least have some size and athleticism there to help contest some of those shots.
I agree with you. The mistakes that MPJ makes now are usually in transition where he's in a cross match and doesn't know where he's supposed to be. And then the other problem is just like from a playoff perspective, right? Teams are gonna like Dame's gonna pick on him. Like he's gonna be the guy that Dame goes after pretty consistently, and they're able to do that a lot more effectively with Grant now. And so like that's gonna be the thing to watch is when teams we haven't seen teams try and pick on him this year. It doesn't happen that often. Like the Mavericks game was a really rare exception of a team that every single night is trying to attack you in pick and roll, trying to find your weak point and really going at you. Most teams don't do that. They save it for the postseason. You're just running standard 1-5 stuff, right? If you're looking at like what's the impact of last night's game, MPJ can absolutely make those rotation plays because of his size and athleticism, and I think that stuff helps, right? The question is, do you believe if a team says we're going to make him the weakness, we're going to challenge him to never make mistakes or to cover in pick and roll situations, do you believe he can do it? And like the Nuggets aren't like shying away from it. They haven't benched him. They haven't been like, no, like you're getting picked on, because nobody's really tried that. They benched him for other reasons if they felt like they could close with Bruce. But I understand the idea, and the numbers back up that the defense is better with Michael Porter Jr. And so everyone's kind of got to go like, okay, so why?
Right.
And there's probably a lot of reasons for it, but that's the key question you have to ask yourself is, do you believe that he can contain the mistakes off ball, and can he contain if he's picked on? And those are the two questions that you really kind of have to answer with him defensively.
Yeah, and I think the thing is too, I thought about the Mavericks game a lot because their whole offense that last game was Luka, Wood, and Dinwiddie hunting weak mismatches and just trying to go at them repeatedly. Now, if that's what your playoff offense is going to consist of, and you're saying that, hey, we're going to take a gamble of Michael Porter Jr. being the liability each possession, I'm not going to lie to you, man. I don't feel as bad about that because, number one, eventually I think the thing is, offensively, if the Nuggets can do what they need to do and play clean basketball, which they've shown that they have a hard time doing at times, but I do think that as the season goes along, they'll get better. But I think if you're trying to make it your whole assignment that we're going to go after one-on-one mismatches for however long, however many stretches, I do think that at some point, MPJ is able to get enough of those stops to where he's able to compensate for some of the possessions that he does get beat on. And he will get beat. And you also know he likes to put his hands in the cookie jar. So he will put his hands in there and get fouls at the rim. He'll get his hand in there, get off-ball fouls. Like, I get that. But I just think that Michael Porter Jr., at least this season, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I think he's taken enough leaps this year where you feel comfortable saying, I'm going to give him as many opportunities as I can until he truly, really hurts us.
Yeah, he's earned the opportunity because his effort level's been really high. Right. One of the things I would say, though, is like this conversation always gets framed as Malone needs to trust him.
Right.
And Malone pretty clearly wants to try and trust him because he understands what he brings. It's the other guys that y'all need to be looking at, because most often when I see bad situations or huge mistakes, it is four heads turning at Michael Porter Jr. with the, what are you doing? And sometimes it's after a stop. Like the guy will blow the layup and they'll get it. And if they're not running the other way, they'll still be like, one guy will still be running past Mike being like, what are you doing? Like, and so those kinds of things have to, like, they play a part in this. We talked about trust. Like, that's a genuine question, is how much do the other Nuggets trust MPJ on both ends of the floor to help them get where they're going? Because the results are fine. Like that, and that's the difference between the like fans, media, and players and coaches. Is the players and coaches know what they're trying to do, and so they see more mistakes than we do, and they respond to those in real time. Versus we're like, what's the problem? He was a plus 17, and he made, he scored 30 points, and then you ask these questions post game, and they're like, yeah, it's good, it's good to see him hit shots. He really hit some shots, boy. Wow, MPJ hit some, and it's not that they're, most of those guys are really trying to pump up Mike. Like, most of that team is really trying to build up his confidence because they know how good he is. But that's kind of the battle that goes on. It's not just a matter of how Malone reacts to what he does. And there's nobody that reacts more to his mistakes than Joker.
Oh, by far.
Joker's also usually the one on the receiving end of whatever the mistake is. If MPJ makes a defensive mistake, it's Joker that gets caught in a bad position and winds up having to foul or getting beat and looking like a clown. And if it's on offense, Joker throwing like turnovers and is frustrated. So that's some of this too, is like, there's just got to be better internal trust from this team that goes to the defense and that extends to MPJ as well.
Yeah. So, we've actually got a chance to cover a lot of the defensive stuff. And so I just think it's so funny. That's just a natural progression, I think, for a lot of Nuggets people right now, because it's like, offense has been great. Turnover was a little high, but man, we can't guard a cold right now. So what I want to know is, where you have seen the last two games, we've seen an adjustment. Christian Brown is apparently no longer in the rookie doghouse.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, Michael Malone felt that he needed to, put him on the bench for a little bit for Davon Reed. Christian Brown has shown a tremendous level of effort, engagement, key rebounds last night versus the Portland Trailblazers that went up on the basket. One of them was opted in another shot opportunity. Man, I'm not gonna lie to you. That Jamal Murray, Bones Highland, Christian Brown, I kind of like what I saw from that. Did you come away thinking that might be something they might be able to do a little bit more in the future?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love putting both Jamal and Bones next to another primary ball handler. I love having them being able to basically be interchangeable as far as both of us can attack in isolation. Both of us can attack and pick and roll. Both of us can spot up and shoot. Like both of us can create offense at the rim. Both of us can pass. Like having that kind of dynamicism that's really been missing from the bench, and that helps a ton. Christian makes a ton of plays. He just does. Like
Right.
I've been defensive of the vets on this team, but the one guy I've said consistently where I'm like, no, he needs to play is Christian Brown. Like there's just, I don't have any sort of argument against it. And one thing I will say is like, you know, Malone, I made it a point before what was the last game? Monday? Before the Mavericks game, who knows what is time? I made a point to ask Malone. Singer asked about Bones, and I asked about Brown. And so I asked Malone about Brown and was just like, you know, what's been your message to him? It's kind of like, and he knows at this point that if I'm asking that, I'm basically like, you have to ask questions to not just Malone, NBA coaches. Right. You have to ask them in such a way that if they're good, they'll know what you're asking about and they'll try and supply you with an answer. Versus if you're like, hey man, so like, why aren't you playing Christian? Because he's really good. And it's dumb that you don't play him. Then that's not going to get the answer you want. And so I asked him, you know, what's been your message? And he said, like, look, you know, he's been great. He's been receptive. He's like, I have to find ways to get him on the floor. And you know, he mentioned he was like, after the first 5 games, I thought that he started doing he got away from the things that we really liked seeing from him. I don't know how much that's true. Like, I thought that Christian wasn't as good in the next 5 games, but I don't know if it was enough to be like, yeah, we're going to reduce your minutes. Right. But it may also just be a matter of that's part of Brown's rookie process. Like most rookies go through that kind of experience. And so he did reward him, put him back in the lineup. We haven't seen Davon in the last 2 games. We'll see if he goes back to it. I would like to be able to feel like I could say Christian's in the rotation, no doubt. He should be. But these things are often, the bigger thing is that this stuff often involves things that we don't see. And so I try not to make assumptions for it just being stupidity or arrogance or misguidedness, and instead just be like, it's possible this happens. But look, their best bench combinations to me are one of the starters staggered with Jamal, Bones, Christian Brown, and in my opinion, DeAndre Jordan. Like that, those are the best combos for me for what I think that they can, that accomplishes what they need.
Is this Matt Moore advocating for more DeAndre Jordan minutes? I think I just heard that.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Amounts of DeAndre Jordan minutes. That's what I'm advocating for. Yeah, it's at the fast. To me, it's a really interesting question based off of both what the numbers and how the team plays. The bigger thing is just like, look, you want to have the offense be primarily driven. You're trying to fix the offense, and you're trying to run it primarily through Jamal and Bones. You need someone to set you good screens. You need someone to create separation, and DeAndre Jordan will do that.
So the Denver Nuggets have a first-round pick that's about 6'11" that shoots about 40% from three. Not certain if you've seen him a lot this year, Matt, but he's somewhere on the bench, and he has said specifically that I feel best at the 4. Do you think that do you see involvement for him on a consistent basis coming this season, or do you just think that similar to Vlatko Čančar, that he's just going to be a guy that's going to come in and be a rotational player when you need him? But otherwise, like, there might not be a huge role coming for him.
I think that Zeke Naji hasn't done enough to help his own situation in the minutes that he's been afforded. I think that Malone will continue to say, you're going to get opportunities. And the reason he says that is because Jeff and DeAndre are going to get hurt or need days off. And so in those situations, Zeke will have an opportunity. And if Zeke absolutely dominates in those minutes, if he plays great, not dominates, if he plays great, if he shows a lot, then there will be, I think, a move to maybe play him more. He played in the game versus Dallas, which I thought was a really interesting twist, considering Malone talked up how well DJ played in the win versus Dallas without Joker. And so, like, Zeke might get some of those minutes. Part of it is Vlatko's getting the third, like the power forward spot in the bench unit. And that's Zeke's best kind of situation. Vlatko, I think, has been really terrible the last 2 games.
2 games. Yeah, the last 2. Yeah, for sure.
Really been bad. I find that he makes a lot of mistakes. I find that a lot of the time it's very feast or famine with what he brings to the table. I think there's a possibility that a Zeke Vlatko unit could theoretically work if you had to try it. I think it comes with a lot of pitfalls. I don't know how much the coaches like it. I don't know how much that should matter or should not matter. But for me, I think the key is that your top 7 guys are essential, and everyone after that needs to be based off of matchup, availability, who's healthy, does it help in this situation, getting a night off. Like, there needs to be interchangeability. And honestly, I thought it was impressive last night that Malone, and also in the last 2 games, Malone has gone to Vlatko and given him an opportunity, and he's been horrible. And then he's moved away from it and changed his rotation. That's what people have wanted. Like, the bench unit needs to be liquid based off of what's working without being so erratic that no one knows what to expect. You have to balance that line between, we're going to match up to what's going on in game, but you also have to give guys opportunities. Like, if a guy's -5 in 5 minutes, well, you can't just be like, well, he lost his minutes, he can't come back again. You got to give guys a chance to dig out of that. And we've seen that from the bench unit a couple of times this season, where they'll have one bad stint and then one really good stint, and that winds up helping win the game.
So, Matt, if you had to maybe rank past the first 7 guys, if you had to look at Zeke, Jeff Green, DeAndre Jordan, Vlatko Chanchar, Christian Brown, Davon Reed, who do you think of those players are most important for helping the bench to balance itself to, at least, if it's going to be an A- on a game-by-game basis, it's not a -10 and the starters are in a hole? Who do you think you would trust more, but even the coaches would trust more, or who do you think might just help fit best for what they're trying to do?
I think the veterans on the team trust the other veterans, first off, and that plays a role. For me, it's about combinations, right? So if you're going to have Jamal and Bones, you're going to need a defensive presence on. Oh, you got a car alarm going off, by the way. You're going to need a defensive presence in terms of like how of what Christian Brown brings, right? Like the high effort, going to bring in like a high level of intensity. And he adds spacing too. The size matters, right? I think you can stagger a little bit. Here's one thing I would say. It's like, all right, let's say you want to play Zeke. Play Zeke and Aaron Gordon together with the bench unit along with Jamal. And that's 2 starters, just like you were doing with Jamal and MPJ. And then you can fill in the rest with like Bones, Shooter, and whoever. If you are trying instead to run like a spread pick and roll game, and it's just, I'll say this, in the minutes where it's just Bones without Jamal, I think those minutes, you got to figure out a way to make the DeAndre Jordan minutes work. Like, he needs a screener. He just does. Like, I do not like the idea of Bones playing in a pick and pop system with Zeke Naji. I don't think that's going to work. I think teams are going to wind up still contesting and being able to collapse inside. I don't think Zeke's ready to run that kind of an offense yet. So giving him a big that can create space for him, I think, is important.
Right.
So to me, it's about the combinations that you get to, and that's what will wind up are more important. I don't think there's a place for Davon Reed. I'm not a big Vlatko guy. I think that he's given some good minutes, but I just don't know like what he brings is essential. And the bigger thing for them is figuring out, how do we make Bruce Brown effective in the second unit? Those minutes should not be that bad. They got to figure out a way to where Bruce Brown helps that second unit with the things that he brings to the table. And that's about them playing better, not who they're playing with or who's playing or who's not playing.
So the Nuggets have a pretty important home stretch coming up. And this is a team that has lost 3 of their last 4. Currently, they have the Jazz coming up on Saturday, and then they have the Wizards. They're at the Lakers, at the Hornets, the Hornets at home, the Grizzlies, the Blazers, and then the Suns. So how confident are you that with the momentum, hopefully, that they gathered because of the Portland win, how confident are you that they can string together some wins to offset the losses they just had? And again, they have some Western Conference games that they can pick up some win. They got a divisional game that I know you love versus the Jazz that's coming up here. Like, how confident are you that they can turn things around a little bit?
I think they turned around. I think they beat Utah pretty handily. Lakers game, I think will be tough with how AD is playing. If he's back to, depending on what health AD's ever in, should be back. So he's supposed to be back tonight from the illness. I kind of think that the travel stuff has had more of an impact than we realize. The players have really tried hard not to use the excuse. They've you ask about it, and they're very much like, hey, that's the schedule, and everybody's got bad schedule spots, and like this is just how it goes. But if you really kind of press, they're like, it's been crazy. It's just been nuts that they've been on the road this much, and it's like one game home and then gone again. So I think getting home, getting past the distractions of home, because people are like, you've been gone so much, I can't wait to see you, all that stuff, and then getting it to settle into a rhythm of home games where you're like, go to the arena, play, go home, sleep in your own bed, get up in the morning, hang out. You got an off day. Next day you come in, you're going to practice, shoot around, do whatever. Next game. Like having that schedule at home for a little bit, I think will do a lot of wonders. It'll also allow them to work on some things. Like it'll allow them to actually, I think, improve a little bit. They'll have more of an ability. They won't have gotten into the hotel at 4. So they could be like, hey, let's come in the morning at 10. Let's do shoot around. We'll do film work and we'll actually prep for this game. And that extra attention to detail, I think will do a lot of good, especially with this coaching staff and their approach to it. I think it'll help a lot with getting them back on track.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I actually think that Jazz game and the Wizards game, I do think those are games that are winnable for them. And I say winnable relative to how they've been playing. So not based on their overall talent, but just where they are. I do think those are good games that you can get some wins. I'm not going to lie to you. That Lakers game is going to be big because I'm not sure if you know, Anthony Davis has basically been a top 5 player for the last 11 games of the year, minus the Cleveland Cavalier game that he just played. And so if he's healthy, he comes back. If he's that 36 and 15 AD, that he's been playing like, and then LeBron has been good as well. And they're figuring some things out with their rotation. That's going to be a good matchup. And so again, we'll see, like I said, how they continue to stack up this confidence. But then you got the Hornets. You got a Grizzlies team that's still playing very well. And then again, you got the Portland Trailblazers, and then you come back and then you play against the Phoenix Suns. So maybe a momentum stretch here. You can really start to make an emphasis on the season, I think, over the next several games and really kind of show who you are as a basketball team. And then again, I think even figuring out, as we talked about earlier, some of your defensive principles, like we trust each other and I want to help you, but I need to make sure that I'm doing my job. That way we're not giving up open 3-pointers, just uncontested, like they did versus the Dallas Mavericks, where Tim Hardaway Jr., basically was just, he turned into Ray Allen, 6 of 8 from 3. And then you had Dorian Finney-Smith that were 5 of 10. So we'll see. I do think that this is an opportunity for them to hopefully make some improvements, but, we'll have to see. Because I don't know what they're going to do defensively. Because I did not project that they were going to be the 27th ranked defense at any point in time this year.
They shouldn't be, right? Like that's why, like, a lot of this is, the turnovers are a bigger deal than it gets talked about, where that's just stuff that is just so fixable. Their record when they don't turn the ball over more than their opponent is so good. They win 68% of the time. Like, it's just such focus. And you run the risk of turning into a team that buys too much into your own press clippings, that buys too much into the hype, that buys too much in the idea of like, we're going to be fine. Like, we're going to be great. Like, this is a playoff team. We're a championship contender. Well, you have to actually be a championship contender. You have to actually do it. You do not get now. You don't have to do it in November. I'll say that. Like, you don't have to. And they've got
is this a Celtics shot that I'm hearing right here?
No. It's just they've got, they're still 14-10. They've got the record and they should still be fine. They need a good stretch here through Christmas. But if they spend this entire year thinking so much that, we'll be fine come playoffs, you won't be. You have to get into a space where you show what you're capable of.
Right. Yeah. And I do think, like I said, that I think some of this is that, and I've said this online many times on Twitter, but this is a team, when I watch them, that is like, we know that at any point in time in the game where we turn it on, that we can beat you. I think the problem is that by the time they decide to turn it on, it's a 14-point, 15-point, 12-point, 10-point game versus a really good team that is already super confident. And as you know, that when a team is already confident, it's really, really hard to slow down that level of momentum and get it done. So, yeah, we'll have to see. But last question I want to ask you. Do you have any teams right now in the NBA that you feel fairly confident in who they are and the identity that they have right now?
That's interesting. You asked about like confidence in the identity, because I think like the Pelicans, I have a lot of confidence in what they can do because they have a lot of different options. But if you ask like who knows who they are, I think it's the Celtics offensively, but their defense hasn't been great. The Bucks know who they are. The Bucks have a really solid feel for like their identity. The Cavs probably more than anybody else. The Cavaliers have like a really strong identity. They know what they're doing. Like that team knows how to play together. They know what their purpose is. They know everything that they're trying to be. Toronto, same deal, because Nick Nurse, like they're always on the same page. They know how they're trying to play. They just can't always do it. In the West, I think Phoenix is sometimes lost. I think the Pelicans are sometimes lost. I think the Grizzlies know how they want to play, but they don't have a lot of options. They can only play one way. The Kings actually know what they want to do. They want to score. They want to run up and down the floor. The Jazz know what they want to do. They want to, create a ton of threes and dribble drive to create those threes. And the Mavericks, I think, actually know what they want to do, because the Mavericks just want to give Luka the ball 100,000 times a game and have him do stuff. Those to me are like the teams I think that know their identity maybe the strongest.
Yeah, I think honestly, if I look in the NBA, surprisingly right now, I think the Pelicans I really feel comfortable with and kind of what they're becoming, their identity. Somehow, Matt, they were able to coax the draft to get Dyson Daniels and Trey Murphy and Herb Jones all at once. And it just doesn't make any sense, because it's just like all three of those players are really good. And that's Brandon Ingram with Zion, Valanciunas, and Jackson Hayes isn't even getting any time. That's the thing. Like they're a very stacked roster right now. So I actually think them and the Celtics are probably my two favorite teams right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Pels. The thing about the Pels is they hit you with so many different angles. Like it's Trey Murphy and CJ dropping threes and Jose Alvarado creating havoc in that second unit with Nance. That bench unit combo is so good. Right. And then Zion, because Brandon Ingram's out, he's able to create with the ball, and that's provided a lot of help for them. Their challenge is going to be when Ingram gets back, because I did a deep dive on them a few weeks ago. They don't know how to play the starting five together. They really don't. When it's CJ, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, Zion, and JV, Zion turns into just like a dunker spot or spot up guy.
Yeah.
And when Zion has the ball, it gets clogged with JV down there. When they have when they have JTA and Trey Murphy, it's more of like uber spacing, lots of room. Zion's got the ball creating. They're gonna have to figure some of that stuff out, and I don't think it's gonna be that easy for them. But they have so many good options, and they have so many good players that are playing really well right now. Willie Green's been fantastic. Their defense is great. They've been really locked in on that end. So, I mean, I think the Pelicans are going to finish as a top 3 seed.
Top 3 seed. Ooh, wow. Spicy take, Matt Moore. Well, look, this has been great. I appreciate you making time to do this. Hey, Swipa Gang, y'all know Matt Moore, HP Basketball on Twitter. Make sure you go watch everything he's doing on LockedOn Nuggets, one of my favorite shows to watch, getting NBA basketball. Do you do NBA bets as well?
Yeah, you can get that on Buckets. I got a podcast called Buckets you can check out for all your betting stuff.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Matt, I appreciate it. This has been great. I really appreciate you making the time to do this. And yeah, hopefully we'll see the Denver Nuggets put some wins together here soon.
Yeah. Anytime for you, man. Love doing this. You're one of my favorite follows on Twitter. Love all your content.
I appreciate it. Hey, Swipa Gang, hit that subscribe button. Y'all know what time it is. We will see y'all